What's happening, everybody? Bob Wankel, CrossingBroad.com. We have the Penn State Nittany Lions and the Minnesota Golden Gophers, a battle of undefeated Big Ten teams. Penn State in the college football playoff. If the season ended today, their number 4 monster game. Can they stay perfect this week? We will get into that in just a moment, but before we do, we want to let you know about DraftKings Sportsbook. It is our favorite sportsbook by far, and you can bet on this game at it by going to crossingbroad.com/DK. They will match your first bet up to $200. DraftKings is live in New Jersey, West Virginia, Indiana, and now in PA. So if you are a Penn State fan, that is absolutely the spot to go and get in on the action.
You can make it rain.
All right, so we have Penn State, we have Minnesota, 12 o'clock kickoff on Saturday afternoon. 2 undefeated Big Ten teams with plenty at stake. Which team's going to cover the spread? We will get to that in just a minute, but before we do, let's take a look at the current odds. Penn State comes in as a 6.5-point favorite, minus 270 on the money line, total set at 47.5. PJ Fleck has this Minnesota team rolling. They are 8-0 for the first time since the 1941 season, but they are going to be up against an elite Penn State team on Saturday afternoon. Minnesota comes in 77th in terms of strength of schedule across the country to this point. Penn State, on the other hand, 7th, and they've played some very difficult games recently against good Big Ten teams, and Minnesota really can't say the same unless you consider Rutgers a quality opponent, and I would not. So, there are some historical trends and some trends that specifically point to Penn State and why we like them in this game, so let's jump into it. First thing you need to know is that PSU is 19-8-3 against the spread, going up against winning teams since the start of the 2016 season. So over the last few years, they've been outstanding against teams over 500. So that's one thing, and then really, there are some trends that build upon one another here, and we'll just roll through them. Big Ten home underdogs playing a top 10 conference opponent are only 35-52-1 ATS, so that's of any spread. Big Ten home underdogs between exactly 5 and 7 points. As we said, the current line is 6.5. When those teams are going up against ranked opponents, they're only 3-17-1 against the spread. That is absolutely terrible. And when Big Ten home underdogs of 5 to 7 points are playing a top 10 team in the conference, they're only 1-8 against the spread. And that is a huge red flag if you're looking to bet on Minnesota in this game. Now, on the other hand, Big Ten road favorites between 5 and 7 points are 24-13-2 against all Big Ten opponents, so conference games specifically there. Penn State, meanwhile, some stuff on them in a more micro level that I think supports a play on them as well. James Franklin's Penn State teams are 10-5 ATS as a road favorite of 6.5 points or more, and they're 8-4 ATS when favored by 6.5 points or more in conference games. So you get these bigger spreads, bigger lines in conference when they're road favorites. Penn State tends to cover. So, again, when we take our first look at this, there is plenty of a reason to bet on Penn State, even though they're going into a difficult environment against what is a very well-coached and what should be an amped-up football team. There's more to like about Minnesota in this game than just the fact that they have home field advantage and that they're well coached. We can point to tangible evidence that this is a much better football team than they were even at the start of the season. And it starts with their offensive line, and that's what it's really all about. Over their first 4 games, keep in mind they started 4 new offensive linemen from a year ago, moving into the beginning of this season. Those first 4 games, they gave up 15 sacks. Over their last 4 games, they've only allowed 1 sack. So you see that unit starting to gain some cohesion. They've been protecting the quarterback a lot better, and they've also been running the football much more effectively. You see here, over the first 4 games, they were averaging only 2.6 yards per rush. Last 4 games, 5.9 yards per rush. Now again, this is going to be a different beast, this Penn State front 7. Can they run the football successfully in this game? That's really what it's going to come down to in terms of their ability to pull off the upset here. But again, that offensive line is playing much, much better recently. Now, Minnesota is 11-8 against the spread at home, and they're 4-2 ATS under PJ Fleck as a home underdog. So not great, it's not crazy, but they've been better than 500 and overall a solid play both at home and as a home underdog under Fleck. And as good as Penn State's been this season, and you got to credit Franklin. He's got this program moving in the right direction. But Penn State is only 5-13 ATS on the road against top 25 teams, and 2-5 ATS against them under Franklin. So that 5-13 number goes all the way back to the 05 season. They're 2-5 against the spread under Franklin against top 25 opponents, and only 1-6 straight up. And that is extremely problematic. We talk about Jim Harbaugh's struggles against elite programs. Well, Franklin's had some success against them at home, has not on the road. So you have to keep that in mind. They did go to Iowa last month and win, beat a ranked opponent there. But again, overall picture, it's been pretty rough. In terms of the total, we love the over. Give you some statistics here, some trends that kind of support a play on that. The over here, as you see, is 7-3 in Penn State's conference road games played after the month of September when they went under in their previous games, so they don't tend to string unders together when they're in conference later in the season. The over is also 56-39 in Big Ten conference games when the total is set between exactly 46.5 and 48.5 points. And you see that we split the difference here with the total currently set at 47.5. So again, a large sample here. We see that the over tends to hit in these types of situations. And finally, the over is 30-21 in Penn State's conference road games played after the month of September, going back to the 2005 season. Nothing overwhelming here, but I get the sense that these two offenses are going to be able to make some plays. You might be able to mix in a defensive score that's going to push this over the 47.5 total. So we like the over. As far as the side goes, you have to love everything that Minnesota's done. I'm sure it's going to be a raucous atmosphere on Saturday afternoon, but I am going to take Penn State. You look at the trouble that home teams have in the Big Ten against elite top 10 level programs. The numbers are hideous, and for that reason, I'll use it as the deciding factor, use it as a tiebreaker. I will take Penn State to cover the 6.5 points at Minnesota on Saturday afternoon. Now, remember, if you want to bet on this game, head to crossingbroad.com/DK. Download DraftKings Sportsbook. They will match your first bet up to $200 if you're in New Jersey, you're in Indiana, West Virginia, and now in PA.